The Pacific dawn broke over Coronado like liquid gold spilling across the training grounds of the Naval Special Warfare Center, salt air mixed with the metallic tang of determination as 60 SEAL candidates gathered on the beach, their breath forming small clouds in the cool morning air. It was 0600 hours on a Monday that would change everything. Caitlin Brennan stood at the head of the formation, her compact 5'3" frame silhouetted
Our
against the
strategy
rising
moving
sun.
forward is to strengthen
Red
our
hair pulled
alliances
back in
and
a
enhance our
regulation
operational
bun,
capabilities.
green eyes scanning the rows of exhausted men before her. At 26, she looked more like a college athlete than someone who'd survived 2 combat deployments in Iraq and 1 in Syria. That was precisely her advantage. Obstacle course, she called out, her voice carrying that particular quality of command that comes not from volume but from absolute certainty. Full gear, 15 minutes. Anyone slower than that runs it again. A few candidates exchanged glances. The standard time was 18 minutes. She was pushing them, testing them, the way her father had pushed every SEAL who'd passed through his hands during 30 years of service. Rear Admiral Declan Brennan had been a legend. SEAL Team 2, Gulf War hero, the man who'd written half the close quarters combat manual, still used today. Cancer had taken him in 2020, but his legacy lived in every corner of this base and most powerfully in the daughter he'd trained from the age of 8. The candidates moved out, boots pounding sand. Caitlin watched them attack the first obstacle, a 30-foot cargo net that swayed treacherously in the ocean breeze. This was her world now. After the shrapnel wound in Syria had ended her intelligence career, teaching had seemed like a consolation prize. She'd discovered it was something more, something essential. Still pushing them hard, I see. The voice came from behind her, warm with approval and age. Captain Everett Vandermeer, 67 years old and retired for 7 years, but still carrying himself like the SEAL instructor he'd been for 4 decades. Silver hair, cropped military, short, weathered face, creased with smile lines earned from training 3 generations of warriors. Dutch. Caitlin's formal bearing softened slightly. Didn't expect you this early. Couldn't sleep. Vandermeer moved to stand beside her, his eyes tracking the candidates with the automatic assessment of a lifelong teacher. Kept thinking about your dad. 5 years ago yesterday, he pinned on his Admiral stars. Seems like last week. They stood in silence for a moment, watching a candidate struggle with the rope climb. The young man's arms trembled, his grip failing. He fell, hit the sand, immediately jumped up to try again. That one's got heart, Vandermeer observed. Heart's not enough. He's using his arms instead of his legs. Brennan method says lock your feet, drive with your hips. Let the big muscles do the work. Vandermeer smiled slightly. I remember when Declan first showed me that technique. 1982, I think. Turned conventional rope climbing on its head. Cut training injuries by 40%. Caitlin watched the candidate try again this time, adjusting his technique. He made it halfway up before fatigue claimed him. Better. Learning. The Rangers are coming today, Vandermeer said, his tone shifting. Joint training program. Lieutenant Commander Garrett asked me to observe. I know. 1,400 hours. Caitlin kept her eyes on the course, but something in her voice tightened. 75th Regiment. Fresh from Afghanistan. Some of them are going to have attitudes. Old school thinking. Vandermeer chose his words carefully. Just watch yourself, Kat. I know the type. I've dealt with worse than attitudes, Dutch. I know you have. He paused, then added quietly, but your dad isn't here anymore to back you up. Caitlin turned to face him fully. In the morning light, she could see the concern etched in his features, the protective instinct that had made him drive from his home in La Jolla at dawn to deliver this warning. I don't need him to back me up, she said softly. He taught me to back myself up. Vandermeer's expression shifted to something like pride. He did at that. A whistle cut the air. The first candidate had finished the course. 14 minutes, 40 seconds. Caitlin checked her stopwatch and nodded approval. I'll be fine, she told Vandermeer. It's just a training demonstration. But the old SEAL instructor had learned to trust his instincts over 40 years of combat and teaching. Something about today felt off. He couldn't name and couldn't point to a specific reason. Just a tightness in his chest, a whisper of warning his younger self would have called superstition, and his current self knew better than to ignore. I'll be in the observation room this afternoon, he said, just in case. The candidates were finishing now, most making the time, a few falling short and turning around to run it again without being told. Good discipline. Caitlin made mental notes on each one. These weren't just bodies to push through training. Each was someone's son, someone's husband, someone's brother. Each would go into harm's way, relying on what she taught them. "To missed," she called out. "Breakfast, then combat water survival at 0900. Don't be late." The candidates dispersed, some limping, all exhausted but wearing the particular expression of men who'd been tested and passed. Caitlin gathered her clipboard and water bottle, preparing to head to the office for the inevitable paperwork. "Kat," Vandermeer's hand touched her shoulder lightly. "Your dad would be proud of who you've become. I hope you know that." She met his eyes, saw the sincerity there, the grief they shared for the man who'd meant everything to her and had been like a brother to him. "I know," she said. "I feel him here sometimes. On the course, in the techniques, in every candidate who refuses to quit." The office Caitlin occupied was small but functional. Gray walls, government-issued desk filing cabinets containing training records and medical certifications. But on one wall, carefully arranged, hung the evidence of a life lived in service. A Bronze Star earned in Fallujah in 2020 when she'd led a team that extracted 3 wounded Marines under heavy fire. A Purple Heart, the physical reminder of the shrapnel that had torn through her left shoulder in Syria, ending her field career at 24. A photograph of her father in his dress whites taken the day he made admiral, his chest decorated with ribbons, representing 3 decades of classified operations and unclassified heroism. And in the center, in a small shadow box, the item she treasured most, her father's dog tags worn thin from years against his chest, handed to her by the Navy chaplain, the day after cancer finally claimed the toughest man she'd ever known. She didn't usually allow herself to look at them during work hours. Emotion was a luxury she couldn't afford when candidates needed her to be harder than granite. But this morning, with Dutch's warning echoing in her mind and the Rangers arriving in 8 hours, she permitted herself a moment. "Miss me, Dad," she whispered to the photograph. The answer came not in words but in memory. 10 years old, backyard in Virginia Beach, her father showing her how to break a wrist hold. 15 summer break, Vandermeer's private training sessions, where she learned techniques most SEALs never mastered. 18, her father's hands on her shoulders after she'd aced the physical qualification test. A knock at the door pulled her back to the present. "Come in." Lieutenant Commander Hale Garrett entered, a folder tucked under his arm. 42, lean and weathered, with the particular intensity of men who'd spent their careers in special operations. He respected Caitlin in a way some officers didn't, perhaps because he'd served under her father in 2008, or perhaps because he was smart enough to recognize competence regardless of gender. "Morning, Brennan. Good session today." "Solid. 3 candidates are borderline on the rope climb, but they're improving. I'll work with them individually this week." Garrett nodded, set the folder on her desk. The Rangers arrive at 1400. Staff Sergeant Derek Hutchins is leading the group. 5 men total. They're here for 3 weeks of joint training. Something in Garrett's voice made Caitlin look up sharply. But Hutchins has a reputation. Good operator, 4 deployments to Afghanistan decorated. But he's old school in ways that aren't always professional. There have been complaints. Nothing that's stuck but smoke usually means fire. What kind of complaints? The kind that involve women. Garrett met her eyes directly. Sexual harassment, unwanted advances. His father is Brigadier General Marcus Hutchins at JSOC. Things get swept under rugs. Caitlin felt something cold settle in her stomach. She'd encountered men like that before. Men who saw women in uniform as targets rather than fellow warriors. "You want me to avoid him? I want you to be aware." Garrett's expression was serious. "You're scheduled to run the hand-to-hand demonstration this afternoon." Vandermeer requested to observe. I approved it. After Garrett left, Caitlin opened the folder. Inside were the standard personnel files for the 5 Rangers. She flipped to Hutchins' page and studied the photograph. 32 years old. 6'2", 215 pounds. Square jaw, cold eyes, the kind of smile that didn't reach past his lips. Combat Action Badge, Bronze Star with Valor, Army Commendation Medal, an impressive record that said nothing about character. She memorized his face, then closed the folder and locked it in her desk. The morning passed in the familiar rhythm of training. Combat water survival at 900, where candidates learn to operate in Pacific swells while carrying full gear. Weapons maintenance at 1100. Lunch at 1200. Through it all, Caitlin maintained her professional mask, pushing the candidates, correcting techniques, building the mental and physical hardness they'd need when bullets started flying. At 13:30 hours, she changed into a fresh training uniform and made her way to the hand-to-hand combat facility. The building was relatively new, funded by a grant that bore her father's name. Inside, blue mats covered the floor of a space the size of a basketball court. Mirrors lined one wall. The other three walls displayed photographs of SEAL combat techniques, many demonstrated by Declan Brennan himself. Vandermeer was already there, sitting in the observation gallery with Garrett and two other senior instructors. He gave her a subtle nod. At precisely 1400 hours, the Rangers arrived. Caitlin heard them before she saw them, the particular sound of combat boots on concrete, the easy laughter of men comfortable in their own dominance. They came through the door in a loose group, and she assessed them in the span of seconds. 5 men, all large, all fit, all wearing the particular swagger that came from being Army Rangers. But her eyes went immediately to the one in front. Derek Hutchins was bigger than his photograph suggested. Not just tall, but broad, with shoulders that strained the fabric of his uniform. Blonde hair cut high and tight, a tattoo creeping up his neck. Eyes that swept the room and landed on her with an expression she recognized immediately. Dismissal, contempt, predatory interest. "Gentlemen," Garrett stood from the observation gallery, voice carrying across the space. "Welcome to the Naval Special Warfare Center. This is Instructor Brennan. She'll be running today's hand-to-hand combat demonstration." One of the Rangers, a corporal with a thin face and nervous energy, whispered something to Hutchins. Hutchins's smile widened. "Ma'am." Hutchins's voice was deep with a slight southern drawl. "I'm Staff Sergeant Derek Hutchins. We appreciate the Navy's hospitality." Professional, polite, but his eyes told a different story. Caitlin nodded. "Sergeant, welcome. Today we'll be covering close quarters defensive techniques, specifically the Brennan method of threat neutralization. This system was developed over 30 years and has been proven in combat environments from Grenada to Mosul." "Brennan method." Another Ranger, stocky and barrel-chested, raised an eyebrow. "Like your name?" "My father developed it. Rear Admiral Declan Brennan. Some of you may have heard of him." Recognition flickered across several faces. In the special operations community, Brennan was a name that commanded respect. But Hutchins' expression didn't change. "We've done hand-to-hand," he said casually. "Army Combatives program. Pretty comprehensive. I'm familiar with it. Good foundation." Caitlin moved to the center of the mat, but the Brennan method focuses on practical application against larger, stronger opponents. Efficiency over strength, leverage over power. "Theoretical or tested?" Hutchins asked, still wearing that smile. "Combat tested. Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan. Multiple engagements." She met his eyes directly. "I need a volunteer for demonstration purposes." The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Then Hutchins stepped forward. "I'll volunteer, ma'am, if you don't mind." In the observation gallery, Vandermeer tensed. Garrett leaned forward slightly. They both recognized what was happening. Hutchins was testing her, challenging her. "Not at all, Sergeant. Please step onto the mat." Hutchins moved with the confidence of a man who'd never lost a physical confrontation. He was 8 inches taller than Caitlin, outweighed her by at least 80 pounds, and radiated the particular arrogance of someone convinced of their own superiority. "Rules," he asked. "Tap if you need to stop. I'll demonstrate at half speed first, then full speed." "Ready." "Ready, ma'am?" Caitlin assumed a neutral stance, hands at her sides. Standard scenario. Aggressor attempts a front grab with intent to control. Defender responds with Brennan method technique 17. Watch the sequence. She moved at half speed, her hands coming up to demonstrate the motion. Hutchins played along, reaching for her shoulders. She showed the hand placement, the pivot, the angle of leverage. See how the defender uses the attacker's momentum, not fighting force with force, redirecting it. Now full speed. Sergeant, whenever you're ready. Hutchins's smile turned predatory. "You sure, ma'am? I don't want to hurt you." "You won't." Something flickered in his eyes. Anger maybe at her certainty. He reached for her fast and hard, trying to grab her shoulders and demonstrate his dominance. What happened next took less than 4 seconds. Caitlin's hands moved with precision her father had drilled into her through 10,000 repetitions. She caught Hutchins' right wrist with her left hand, stepped inside his reach, and used his own momentum to pull him off balance. Her right hand found the pressure point at the base of his thumb, applying exactly the right amount of force. She pivoted using her hips as a fulcrum, and suddenly Hutchins' arm was twisted behind his back at an angle that sent lightning up his shoulder. He gasped, tried to muscle out of it, discovered that any movement increased the pain exponentially. His face went red, then white. He dropped to one knee. Tap, Caitlin said quietly without emotion. Hutchins tapped twice against his own leg. She released him immediately, stepped back, offered a hand to help him up. He ignored it, stood on his own, rubbing his shoulder. The other Rangers were silent, eyes wide. In the observation gallery, Vandermeer allowed himself the smallest smile. That's Brennan method technique 17, Caitlin continued, as if nothing significant had happened. Effective against opponents of any size. The key is timing and leverage, not strength. Who wants to try it next? The rest of the afternoon passed in a careful dance of professionalism. Caitlin taught the Rangers learned, and Hutchins maintained a veneer of courtesy that didn't quite hide the rage simmering beneath. She'd humiliated him in front of his men, in front of Navy brass, and men like Derek Hutchins didn't forget humiliation. At 16:30 hours, Garrett dismissed the Rangers. They filed out several offering genuine thanks for the instruction. Hutchins was last pausing at the door to look back at Caitlin. Interesting technique, ma'am, he said. Lot different from what we use. Different branches, different approaches. Right. His smile was a blade. Maybe we can compare notes sometime. Off duty. I keep my professional and personal life separate, Sergeant. Of course, professional. He lingered a moment longer, then followed his men out. As soon as the door closed, Vandermeer was down from the gallery and at Caitlin's side. Be careful around that one cat, he said quietly. I know the type. Caitlin began gathering the training equipment her movements controlled. He volunteered. I demonstrated a technique. That's my job. I know. Vandermeer kept his voice low. Just promise me you'll watch your back. Garrett joined them, his expression troubled. Vandermeer's right. Hutchins has a history. Be careful the next few weeks. I'm always careful. Caitlin locked the equipment cabinet, turned to face them both. I appreciate the concern, but I can handle Derek Hutchins. After they left, Caitlin stood alone in the training facility, looking at the photographs on the wall. Her father demonstrating a knife defense. Her father teaching a joint manipulation. Her father looking directly at the camera, his expression serious, the weight of responsibility clear in his eyes. I know, Dad, she whispered. I felt it too. But some battles you can't avoid. You taught me that. Evening in Coronado meant golden light slanting across the naval base palm trees, casting long shadows, the Pacific turning from blue to copper. Caitlin finished her paperwork at 1900 hours later than intended but necessary. Training reports, injury logs, equipment, maintenance requests. Her phone buzzed. A text from Vandermeer. Dinner tomorrow, my treat. She smiled despite herself, typed back, the show 700 breakfast instead. You're up anyway. Deal. The donut bar. Don't be late. Caitlin gathered her things, locked her office, and made her way to the parking lot. Her vehicle was a Ford F-150 Raptor Midnight Blue with aftermarket upgrades for off-road capability. It had been her father's, his retirement gift to himself, handed down to her in his will, along with his dog tags and his legacy. The parking lot was nearly empty at this hour. Most personnel had left by 1700. A few lights burned in distant buildings where duty officers maintained their watch. The sound of the ocean was clear waves breaking against the shore beyond the fence line. Caitlin was halfway to her truck when she heard the footsteps. Not the measured stride of security patrol. Something heavier. Multiple people. And they were behind her, closing distance. She didn't turn around. Didn't speed up. Just kept walking, her right hand moving casually to her hip, where a small canister of pepper spray rode on her belt. Military bases were safe, but she was her father's daughter. Always prepared. Hey, PT Barbie. The voice was deliberately loud, slurred with alcohol. Caitlin's stomach tightened. She recognized that voice. She turned slowly. 30 feet away, Derek Hutchins stood with two of his Rangers. The corporal with the thin-faced Jensen and a specialist named Wolf Stocky with hard eyes. All three had clearly been drinking. She could smell the beer from here. Sergeant Hutchins, Her voice was level professional. "Can I help you with something?" Hutchins swaggered forward, his men flanking him. "We were just leaving the base. Saw you walking. Thought we'd say hi." "Hi." Caitlin's hand stayed near her pepper spray. "It's late. You gentlemen should get back to your barracks." "That's the thing." Hutchins kept coming, closing the distance to 20 feet, then 15. "We wanted to talk about today. That little demonstration. The training went well. I'll submit a report to Lieutenant Commander Garrett." "Yeah, the training." Hutchins' smile was ugly now, the alcohol stripping away pretense. "See, what bothered me is how you showed me up in front of my men. Made me look weak. That wasn't my intention. I was demonstrating a technique." "Right, a technique." He was 10 feet away now. Jensen and Wolf had spread out, creating a triangle with Caitlin at the center. Professional ambush positions. "Funny thing is, I've been thinking about that technique all evening, wondering if it was luck or if you actually know what you're doing." "I know what I'm doing, Sergeant. Now I'm going to ask you to step back and let me leave." "Or what?" Hutchins took another step. "You gonna throw me again? Here with no witnesses?" Caitlin's training kicked in. "Assess the situation." 3 hostile actors, intoxicated, aggressive posture. Closest cover, her truck, 15 feet to her right. Nearest security call box, 50 yards behind her. Help response time, 3 to 5 minutes. She was alone. "This is your last chance," she said quietly. "Walk away, sleep it off. Tomorrow we pretend this never happened." Hutchins's laugh was harsh. "You don't get it, do you, women like you playing soldier thinking you're special because you can throw around some techniques? You need to learn your place." He lunged. Caitlin had been expecting. It was already moving before his hand reached her. She sidestepped, used his momentum against him, sent him stumbling past her into empty air. But Jensen was faster than she'd anticipated. He came in from the side, grabbing for her arm. She twisted, broke his grip with a sharp wrist rotation, drove her elbow into his solar plexus. He gasped, staggered back. Wolf hesitated. He was watching Caitlin with new eyes, seeing not a woman but a trained operator who just neutralized 2 attackers in as many seconds. "Wolf," Hutchins snarled, recovering his balance. "Don't just stand there." But Wolf stayed where he was, hands half raised. "Sarge, this is too far. She's an instructor. We're on a Navy base." Hutchins's face went purple with rage. "She embarrassed me. She needs to learn. Derek, man, let's just go." Jensen was bent over, trying to catch his breath. "This is a bad idea." For a moment, Caitlin thought they might actually leave. Thought the situation might de-escalate into nothing more than a drunken confrontation and a disciplinary report. Then Hutchins' hand went to his belt, and everything changed. The knife appeared 8 inches of blackened steel, catching the parking lot lights. A K-bar, the iconic combat blade, carried by Marines and adopted by operators across all branches. Hutchins held it low and ready, the grip of someone who knew how to use it. "You bitch," he breathed. "I'll teach you what happens when you disrespect a ranger." Wolf actually backed away. "Derek, no, this is assault. Weapons. They'll court-martial you." "Shut up." Hutchins's eyes were wild now, all rational thought drowned in alcohol and wounded pride. "I'm just gonna scare her. Remind her what real soldiers can do." Caitlin's world narrowed to the blade. She'd trained knife defense for 15 years, from her father's backyard lessons to advanced Krav Maga courses with Israeli instructors. She knew the statistics. Knife fights were chaos. Everyone got cut. Survival was about damage control. But Derek Hutchins didn't know what he was facing. Didn't know about the 10,000 hours. Didn't know about the muscle memory burned so deep she could execute techniques unconscious. He slashed at her, a wide arc meant to intimidate more than injure. Textbook amateur mistake. Caitlin's hands moved in the pattern her father had taught her on her 16th birthday. Left forearm up, outside block, parrying the blade away from her body. Step inside the arc where the knife couldn't reach. Right hand capturing his wrist thumb, finding the pressure point that made his fingers spasm involuntarily. Hutchins tried to pull back, tried to reverse the knife, but Caitlin was already inside his decision loop. She stepped closer still, her body against his, eliminating any space where the blade could be effective. Her right elbow came up fast and hard, catching him perfectly on the point of his jaw. His head snapped back. His eyes went unfocused for a critical second. And in that second, Caitlin applied pressure to his wrist with surgical precision, twisting at exactly the angle that turned his own anatomy against him. The K-bar clattered to the concrete. Hutchins roared, tried to grab her with his free hand. She was already behind him, had already slipped her arm around his neck in the rear naked choke her father had perfected during 3 decades of teaching. Not a blood choke, not a trachea crush, but the perfect combination that closed the carotid arteries and sent the brain into emergency shutdown. Hutchins struggled his superior size and strength, meaning nothing against technique and position. His face went from red to purple. His movements became erratic, then weak. 8 seconds after the choke locked in, he went limp. Caitlin lowered him carefully to the ground, checked his breathing, confirmed he was unconscious, but stable. Then she stood turning to face Jensen and Wolf. Jensen's eyes were wide with shock. Wolf had his hands raised in surrender. "I didn't touch you," Wolf said quickly. "I tried to stop him. You saw that." Headlights swept the parking lot. A Humvee with security forces markings rounded the corner, lights flashing. The vehicle screeched to a stop. Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, Master-at-Arms, emerged with 3 security personnel, all moving with practiced efficiency. "Freeze, nobody move." Caitlin stepped away from Hutchins' hands visible. "Chief Rodriguez, Staff Sergeant Hutchins assaulted me. I defended myself. His knife is on the ground approximately 6 feet to my right. These 2 witnesses can confirm." Rodriguez took in the scene with a quick assessment of an experienced military cop. Unconscious Army Ranger on the ground, knife visible in the lighting. 2 other Rangers looking guilty and scared. And Caitlin Brennan, 5'3" and maybe 130 pounds, standing calm and professional. "Miss Brennan, are you injured?" "No, Chief." "Anyone else injured?" Jensen raised his hand weakly. "She elbowed me in the stomach, but I'm okay." Rodriguez's eyebrow rose slightly, but he didn't comment. "Corporal Jensen's Specialist Wolf, sit on the curb with your hands visible." He keyed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Rodriguez. I need medical duty officer and NCIS to parking lot Charlie immediately. Assault with a deadly weapon suspect in custody." As his team secured the scene, Rodriguez approached Caitlin. They'd worked together before, had mutual respect. "What happened?" he asked quietly. "Check the security cameras, Chief. They'll show everything." Sergeant Hutchins and his men approached me. Verbal confrontation escalated to physical assault. Hutchins produced a knife. "I defended myself using appropriate force." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "The cameras will confirm this. Every second." A groan from the ground. Hutchins was coming around, his eyes fluttering open, confusion giving way to rage as he realized what had happened. Rodriguez's security team had him in flex cuffs before he could move. "Staff Sergeant Derek Hutchins, you are being detained for assault with a deadly weapon on a naval installation. You have the right to remain silent." "She attacked us." Hutchins struggled against the restraints. "That bitch attacked 3 soldiers." "Sir, I strongly suggest you remain silent until you have legal representation." Rodriguez's voice was flat professional. Medical arrived, checked Hutchins for injuries, declared him fit for transport. The duty officer took statements. And finally, pulling up in an unmarked sedan, NCIS Special Agent Nora Sullivan arrived. Sullivan was 42, professional, with the particular intensity of federal investigators who'd seen the worst humanity had to offer. She spoke briefly with Rodriguez, reviewed the security camera footage on a tablet, then approached Caitlin. "Miss Brennan, I'm Special Agent Sullivan, NCIS. I need to ask you some questions about tonight's incident." "Of course, Agent. Did you know Staff Sergeant Hutchins prior to today?" "We met this afternoon during a training demonstration." "And tonight's confrontation?" Caitlin walked Sullivan through the entire sequence, her training and intelligence work making her account precise and factual. Times, positions, exact words when possible, observable facts rather than interpretations. Sullivan listened, took notes, her expression neutral. When Caitlin finished, the agent was quiet for a long moment. "The security footage corroborates your account completely," Sullivan finally said. "Self-defense textbook case. But I need you to understand something, Miss Brennan. This isn't Hutchins' first incident. I've heard he has a history that's been suppressed by influential family connections. His father is Brigadier General Marcus Hutchins." Sullivan met Caitlin's eyes directly. "This time is different. You're military personnel. The assault occurred on federal property, and we have crystal clear evidence." Good, Caitlin said simply. There will be repercussions. His father will push back. You'll be questioned extensively. I understand. Sullivan's expression softened slightly. I read your file while driving over. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, intelligence operations in some very dangerous places. You're not someone who scares easily. I learned from the best, Caitlin said quietly. My father taught me to stand up, do what's right, and deal with the consequences. Rear Admiral Brennan, I knew of him. Good man. Sullivan closed her notebook. You're free to go, but I'll need you available for follow-up questions. As Sullivan walked away, Caitlin finally allowed herself to feel the adrenaline crash. Her hands trembled slightly. Her phone rang. Vandermeer. Of course he'd heard already. I'm fine, she said before he could ask. Rodriguez called me. Said you took down 3 Rangers, one armed with a knife. I took down one. The other 2 were just there. Cat. Vandermeer's voice was rough with emotion. You could have been killed. But I wasn't. Dad's training worked. A long pause, then, I'm coming over. Dutch, it's late. I'm fine, really. I'm already in the truck. After everyone left, Caitlin stood alone by her vehicle. The knife was gone, bagged as evidence, but the memory would stay sharp. She'd been trained for this her entire life. Had known someday her father's lessons would be tested not on a training mat but in real violence. Tonight had been that test and she'd passed, but the passing felt hollow. Because she knew this wasn't over. Hutchins wouldn't forget. His father wouldn't let it rest. The first battle was won, but the war was just beginning. Caitlin climbed into her father's truck, started the engine, and drove toward home, watching her mirrors, trusting nothing exactly as she'd been taught. The interrogation room at the Naval Special Warfare Command building smelled of stale coffee and fluorescent lighting. Caitlin sat alone at the metal table, her posture relaxed despite the tension humming through her body. It was Euro 200 hours, technically Tuesday morning, and she'd been waiting for 40 minutes. The door opened. Captain Hale Garrett entered first, his expression carefully neutral. Behind him came NCIS Special Agent Nora Sullivan, carrying a thick folder. And then, to Caitlin's surprise, Captain Everett Vandermeer. Dutch looked like he'd dressed in 30 seconds. Mismatched socks visible above his deck shoes, his jacket zipped over what was probably a sleep shirt. But his eyes were sharp, alert, protective. Miss Brennan. Sullivan took the seat across from Caitlin, placed the folder on the table but didn't open it. Thank you for your patience. This is a complex situation. I understand, Agent Sullivan. Captain Vandermeer has been read in as a character witness and advisor. Captain Garrett is here representing Naval Special Warfare Command. And I'm here because NCIS handles all felony assaults on naval installations. Caitlin nodded. Standard procedure, but the presence of 3 senior officials at Euro 200 meant this was bigger than a simple assault case. Sullivan opened the folder, revealing security camera stills. The images were crisp, well-lit, damning. Hutchins grabbing Caitlin's arm, the knife appearing. Caitlin's defensive sequence captured in brutal clarity. Hutchins unconscious on the ground. The security footage is unambiguous, Sullivan said. You were assaulted. You defended yourself. Everything you told Chief Rodriguez matches the evidence perfectly. Then why am I here? Caitlin kept her voice level. Garrett leaned forward. Because Staff Sergeant Derek Hutchins is claiming you initiated the confrontation. He says you've been harassing him since the training demonstration. His father, Brigadier General Marcus Hutchins, has already contacted the JAG office. He's claiming the footage is being misinterpreted. Vandermeer made a disgusted sound. That's absurd. The cameras show... We know what the cameras show, Dutch. Sullivan's voice was patient. But there's something else you need to know. Something that changes the entire situation. She pulled out a new folder, this one marked with classification warnings. Top secret, sensitive compartmented information. For the past 8 months, NCIS and Army CID have been running a joint investigation into weapons trafficking from Afghanistan. Military equipment that should have been destroyed has been appearing in the United States. High-end gear, night vision systems, body armor, modified weapons. Garrett's expression was grim. How much are we talking about? Conservatively, $2 million worth of equipment over the past 2 years. Rifles, optics, communications gear. It's being sold to domestic militia groups, survivalist organizations, and individuals on terrorist watch lists. Caitlin felt the pieces clicking into place. Hutchins is involved. We believe he's a courier, not the mastermind, but an essential part of the network. He rotated back from Afghanistan 6 months ago. Since then, we've documented 4 large shipments of military equipment entering the San Diego area. The timeline matches his leave periods. Vandermeer stood paced to the window. You're telling us that tonight's assault might blow your investigation. If we charge Hutchins now, his lawyers will claim persecution. They'll tie up the case in military courts for months. And while that happens, the trafficking network will scatter. Caitlin understood immediately. You want me to help you finish the investigation? Yes. Sullivan pulled out more documents. Surveillance photos. A warehouse in Chula Vista. Men loading crates. And in one photo, Derek Hutchins standing next to a semi-truck, shaking hands with a man whose face was partially obscured. Tomorrow morning, the assault case gets quietly settled. You agree to accept a formal apology. Hutchins gets an Article 15 reduced rank confined to base. His father declares victory. Hutchins thinks he got away with it. But he didn't, Caitlin said. He got cocky, told one of his men about a business opportunity at a private party this Friday night. Warehouse in Chula Vista. We believe that's where the next weapons transfer will happen. We need someone inside. The room went very quiet. Vandermeer turned from the window. Absolutely not. You're asking her to go undercover with a man who just tried to assault her. I'm asking her to use her intelligence training, Sullivan said. Miss Brennan spent 2 years running assets in Iraq. She's qualified for this kind of operation. Dutch, Caitlin's voice cut through his objection. Let her finish. Sullivan nodded gratitude. Hutchins will think he won. His ego will be inflated. Men like that can't help but brag. We wire you up, you attend the party, you document who's there and what's being sold. When the deal goes down, we move in. And if something goes wrong, Garrett asked, we'll have SWAT 2 blocks away, full tactical team. At the first sign of trouble, we extract her. Caitlin studied the surveillance photos. The warehouse looked industrial, isolated. But she thought about those women who'd faced Hutchins before. The ones who'd accepted transfers, signed NDAs, been sent home and forgotten. She thought about her father, about the lessons he'd taught not just in combat techniques, but in character. Stand up. Do what's right. What's the larger investigation? She asked. You said Hutchins is small fish. Who are you really after? Sullivan and Garrett exchanged glances. Finally, Sullivan opened the classified folder completely. Inside was a photograph of a man in Navy khakis, Chief Petty Officer, Special Warfare insignia visible, hard face, cold eyes. Chief Petty Officer Wade Kincaid, Sullivan said, retired SEAL Team 5, 22 years of service, decorated veteran. Caitlin stared at the photograph, something cold spreading through her chest. I know that name, she whispered. Vandermeer was at her side immediately. Cat. Wade Kincaid served with my father, 2005 to 2008, I think. Dad talked about him. They were friends. Sullivan's expression was sympathetic but resolute. We believe Chief Kincaid is running the trafficking operation. He retired in 2019 with a 30% disability rating. Filed multiple appeals for higher compensation, all denied. He's bitter, financially desperate, and still has contacts throughout the special operations community. Dad trusted him. Caitlin's voice sounded distant. People change, Garrett said quietly, especially when they feel the system failed them. Vandermeer put a hand on Caitlin's shoulder. This is too much. First Hutchins, now finding out you'd have to help take down Declan's friend. But Caitlin was thinking about her father's funeral. 5 years ago, standing at Arlington, Kincaid had been there in dress blues, tears on his weathered face. He'd approached her after said something about Declan being the best man he'd ever served with. Had that been real? Or had the rot already started? Show me the evidence, she said. Sullivan laid it out methodically. Financial records showing Kincaid depositing large cash amounts, surveillance photos of him meeting with known militia leaders, intercepted communications using coded language, and most damning, a customs inspection report showing discrepancies in equipment manifests from Kincaid's last deployment. The weapons showing up in militia raids have serial numbers, Sullivan explained. They match equipment assigned to SEAL Team 5 during Kincaid's final deployment, specifically HK-416 rifles with custom modifications only used by Naval Special Warfare. That's Dad's weapons system, Caitlin said. He helped develop those modifications, which is why this is particularly painful. Kincaid is selling equipment that your father helped design to domestic extremists who want to attack federal buildings and military installations. Sullivan pulled out another surveillance image, this one from thermal imaging. We're also concerned about this. She pointed to a heat signature in the warehouse's second-floor office. Thermal shows what might be stored explosives. Kincaid has EOD training from his SEAL days. We believe he's rigged the building as insurance. Vandermeer leaned forward. A dead man's switch. Possibly. We won't know until we're inside, which is why extraction protocol is critical. If Kincaid feels cornered, he might try to take everyone with him. Caitlin felt cold spread through her chest. You're sending me into a building that might be rigged to explode. We'll have EOD specialists staged with SWAT. The moment we confirm explosives, they move in. But Kat, you need to know the full risk profile before you commit. The anger that had been cold in Caitlin's chest turned hot. Her father had spent 30 years serving his country, and now someone he'd trusted was perverting that legacy for profit. What do you need from me? She asked. Sullivan pulled out a detailed briefing packet. Phase 1, tomorrow morning you return to work. Act professional but subdued. When you cross paths with Hutchins, you apologize. You stroke his ego. Phase 2. Over the next few days, you continue being deferential. Hutchins will test you, push boundaries. You accept it. His arrogance will grow. Eventually, he'll invite you to the warehouse party. Phase 3, Friday night, you attend the party wearing a wire, video and audio recording. You document everyone present, everything said, and most importantly, you confirm Kincaid's involvement in the weapons transfer. And when the deal goes down, we have SWAT staged nearby. The moment money and weapons exchange hands, we move. You get clear, we arrest everyone. Garrett cleared his throat. The risk profile on this is significant. If Kincaid recognizes you, he will, Caitlin interrupted. I look like my mother. Dad said so all the time. Kincaid knew my mother. He'll make the connection. Then we need a cover story, Sullivan said. They worked through scenarios for the next hour. Finally, they settled on something simple. Caitlin would use her middle name, Madison. She claimed to be a Navy contractor who did physical therapy work at the base. Met Hutchins during a training session. He invited her to a party she accepted. Thin but plausible. We'll need to train you on the wire equipment, Sullivan said, and I want you working with our behavioral specialist. When do we start? 6 hours. Get some sleep, then report to the NCIS field office at 0900. As the meeting broke up, Garrett pulled Caitlin aside. I know what you're thinking, that you owe this to your father, to those women Hutchins hurt, to the integrity of the service. But Kat, you don't owe anyone your safety. If this feels wrong at any point, you can walk away. I appreciate that, sir, but I'm not walking away. Vandermeer drove her home in silence. As he pulled into the driveway, he finally spoke. Your dad and I had a conversation once, 2010, I think. He just found out you wanted to join the Navy. He was terrified. He never showed it. Of course not. He was Declan Brennan. But late one night, he told me his biggest fear wasn't that you'd get hurt. It was that you'd be put in a position where you had to choose between safety and duty, and he'd raised you to always choose duty. Caitlin looked at the house, at the light she'd left burning. He raised me right. I know, that's what scares me. Vandermeer's voice was rough. I promised him, Kat. At the funeral, I promised I'd look out for you. You are looking out for me by respecting my choices. And if those choices get you killed, then I died doing something that mattered. She opened the door, paused. Dad didn't raise me to be safe Dutch. He raised me to be useful. There's a difference. Inside, the house felt empty without her father's presence. She'd kept everything mostly the way he'd left it. His books on the shelves, his Navy photographs on the walls, his coffee mug still in the cabinet. She made tea, sat at the kitchen table, and called up the photo on her phone. Her father in his hospital bed 2 days before the cancer, one thin and weak, but still commanding. His hand holding hers, his eyes still sharp. I'm going to take down your friend, she told the photograph. I'm sorry, Dad. I know you trusted him, but he perverted everything you built, and I can't let that stand. She finished her tea and went to bed, but sleep was elusive. Her mind kept replaying the parking lot confrontation, kept fast-forwarding to Friday night in a warehouse full of criminals and weapons. At 04:30, she gave up on sleep and went for a run on the beach. The Pacific was steel gray in the pre-dawn light. She ran 5 miles at combat pace, pushing until her lungs burned, using physical pain to quiet the mental noise. The NCIS field office was a nondescript building in downtown San Diego. Caitlin arrived at 0900 sharp, was escorted to a conference room where Sullivan waited with two technical specialists and a woman in her 50s with intelligent eyes. Miss Brennan, this is Dr. Angela Morrison, our operational psychologist. She'll be helping you prepare for the emotional aspects of the undercover work. De Morrison's handshake was firm. I understand you have intelligence experience, but this is different. This is personal. The man who assaulted you will be there. The man who betrayed your father's trust will be there. We need to make sure you can maintain operational discipline under that kind of emotional pressure. They spent 2 hours role-playing scenarios. Dr. Morrison played Hutchins, then Kincaid pushing Caitlin's buttons, testing her responses. You're angry, Dr. Morrison observed during a break. That's natural, but anger makes you reactive. In this operation, you need to be observational. A camera, not a participant. I can separate my emotions from the mission. Can you? When Hutchins makes a crude comment, when he touches you inappropriately, when he brags about getting away with assault, can you smile and nod and record it all without reacting? Caitlin thought about those women again, about justice delayed and perpetrators emboldened. Yes, because every second of footage, every recorded word is ammunition for the prosecution. Dr. Morrison studied her for a long moment. You're more like your father than you know. He had that same ability to think strategically, even in emotionally charged situations. But Kat, it's okay to acknowledge that this will be hard. What does make me stronger? Knowing your limits, having an exit strategy, understanding that there's no shame in calling for extraction if the situation becomes untenable. The technical specialist showed her the wire equipment, a tiny camera embedded in what looked like a normal shirt button, audio recorder smaller than a stick of gum concealed in the underwire of a sports bra. Both devices transmitted to a receiver van up to 300 yards away. They made her practice wearing the equipment, moving naturally, remembering not to cover the camera with her arms or jacket. By 1400 hours, Sullivan declared her ready. Tomorrow you return to work. Wednesday and Thursday you build rapport with Hutchins. Friday night is the operation. SWAT will be commanded by Lieutenant Marcus Webb. You'll meet him Thursday for final tactical planning. And if Kincaid recognizes me immediately, you stick to the cover story. Madison Physical Therapy Contractor, friend of Hutchins. If he pushes, you mention you knew your father served with him, but you didn't want to bring it up because it's painful. Make it about grief, not deception. Caitlin nodded, but doubt gnawed at her. Kincaid was an experienced SEAL. Could she really fool him? One more thing, Sullivan said, pulling out a small device that looked like a car key fob. Panic button. You press this, we come in hard and fast, consequences be damned. Your safety takes priority over the investigation. Understood? Understood. As Caitlin left the field office, her phone rang. Vandermeer. How did it go? I'm wired, briefed, and ready to lie to criminals for the next 4 days. Listen, I pulled some strings. I'm assigned as tactical advisor to the SWAT team of Friday night. I'll be in the command van watching the feeds. Relief flooded through her. Dutch, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Plus, I know that warehouse. Ran training exercises there in the 90s. I can guide SWAT through the building if needed. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when this is over and everyone's in custody and you're safe. Tuesday morning, Caitlin returned to the Naval Special Warfare Center in her uniform professional demeanor, in place dread coiling in her stomach. The word had spread through the base overnight. Everyone knew about the parking lot assault. She ignored them all, went to her office, reviewed the day's training schedule. At 0800, Lieutenant Commander Garrett summoned her. The settlement is official, he said without preamble. Hutchins accepted an Article 15 reduction to E5 confined to base. In exchange, all parties agreed to treat the incident as a misunderstanding exacerbated by alcohol. The words tasted like ash. I understand, sir. Publicly, this is resolved. Privately, I want you to know that I find the whole situation repugnant. But I'm told there are larger considerations. Yes, sir. Be careful, Brennan. Men like Hutchins don't forget humiliation. I'm counting on it, sir. At 1,000 hours during a break in training, Caitlin saw Hutchins across the yard. He was with his rangers, all of them watching her. When their eyes met, he smiled. Predatory, triumphant, vicious. She forced herself to look away first. Forced herself to project weakness, defeat. It was the hardest thing she'd done since watching her father die. That afternoon, during equipment maintenance, Hutchins approached her directly. Jensen and Wolf hung back, clearly uncomfortable. Hey, Hutchins' voice was casual but his eyes were calculating. Wanted to say no hard feelings about the other night. Guess we both had too much adrenaline going. Every instinct screamed at Caitlin to tell him exactly what she thought. Instead, she ducked her head slightly, the body language of submission. I overreacted, she forced out. I'm sorry I hurt you. Water under the bridge. He stepped closer, invading her personal space deliberately. You know you're not bad when you're not trying to prove something. Maybe we could get a drink sometime, off base, start over. The wire was recording every word. The camera was capturing his body language, his invasion of her space, the implicit threat. Maybe, she said quietly. I'd like that. Hutchins' smile widened. He'd won, or thought he had. I'll be in touch, he said, and walked away. Jensen lingered for a moment. Miss Brennan. Don't, Caitlin interrupted softly. Just go. He went and she stood alone in the equipment yard fighting the urge to vomit. Instead, she finished her duties, filed her reports, and went home to review the footage with Sullivan. Perfect, the NCIS agent said. He's already getting comfortable that you're already pushing boundaries. Give it 2 more days and he'll be bragging about everything. Wednesday was more of the same. Hutchins found excuses to interact with her, always with that smile, that always testing how much he could push. Twice he touched her arm without permission. Once he made a comment about her body that would have gotten him court-martialed if anyone had officially heard it. The wire heard it, the camera saw it, and the case against him grew stronger. Thursday morning, Caitlin met with Lieutenant Marcus Webb and the SWAT team at a secure facility. Webb was 45, built like a linebacker with kind eyes that didn't match his intimidating presence. Miss Brennan, I want you to know that your safety is my primary concern, he said immediately. The investigation is important, but not as important as making sure you walk out of that warehouse alive and unharmed. They reviewed the tactical plan. SWAT would be staged in 2 vans 2 blocks from the warehouse. 4 additional officers in civilian clothes would be scattered around the perimeter. The moment the weapons transfer was confirmed, or the moment Caitlin signaled danger, they'd breach. Breach time from your signal is 90 seconds, Webb explained. I know that sounds like forever when you're in danger, but it's actually fast for this kind of operation. Can you give us 90 seconds? Caitlin thought about her training, about the parking lot fight, about every hard lesson her father had taught her. I can give you 90 seconds. Vandermeer pulled her aside after the briefing. I've been thinking about Kincaid, about what you should say if he recognizes you. Sullivan gave me a cover story. Forget the cover story. If Wade recognizes you, tell him the truth. Tell him you're Declan's daughter, that you heard about the party through Hutchins, that you wanted to see what your dad's old teammates were up to. Make it about nostalgia and curiosity, not investigation. That's off script. Sometimes off script is more believable than rehearsed lies. Wade knew you as a kid. He knew your father. Playing on that emotional connection might be safer than trying to deceive him completely. It made sense, but it also terrified her. Using her father's memory as a shield felt wrong. I'll play it by ear, she finally said. That's all I ask. Just remember you've got 20 trained operators ready to come get you. You're not alone in this. Thursday afternoon, her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Hey, it's Derek. Party tomorrow night, 2100. Warehouse at 2847 Industrial Way, Chula Vista. Dress casual. Gonna be a good time. She stared at the message, feeling the weight of what was about to happen. She texted back, see you there, Marie. Then she forwarded the message to Sullivan and began her final preparations. Tomorrow night would determine everything. Justice or failure. Truth or deception. And somewhere in the balance, the legacy of Rear Admiral Declan Brennan would either be honored or desecrated. Caitlin went home and stood in front of her father's photograph for a long time. I'm ready, Dad, she whispered. I'm ready to finish this. Friday descended on San Diego with the weight of inevitability. Caitlin woke at 0500, her internal clock refusing to acknowledge rest. The house felt charged with the energy of a mission about to commence. She ran her usual 5 miles on the beach, but this time she wasn't running to clear her mind. She was running through scenarios, contingencies, escape routes. The warehouse layout was burned into her memory. Two main entrances, loading bay and the rear offices on the second floor, with external fire escape, three potential choke points. Back home, she showered and forced herself to eat breakfast. Operational discipline demanded fuel clarity, the physical preparation that might mean the difference between success and catastrophe. Her phone rang at 0730. Sullivan, how are you feeling? Ready. Caitlin's voice was steady. NCIS techs will be at your house at 1800 to fit the wire. SWAT stages at 2000. We'll have eyes on the warehouse starting at 1900. You arrive at 2100 as planned. Understood. Cat, Sullivan's voice softened. You can still back out. There is no other way, not one that puts these people away for good. After Sullivan hung up, Caitlin spent the morning in careful preparation. She selected her clothes with tactical precision. Dark jeans that allowed movement, fitted black top that would conceal the wire leather jacket with internal pockets for the panic button. Boots with good traction. She checked her personal Glock 19, the weapon her father had given her on her 21st birthday. Sullivan had secured authorization given the circumstances. The weight in her ankle holster was comforting. At 1300, Vandermeer arrived unannounced with takeout lunch. Figured you might need company, he said, unpacking Thai food on her kitchen table. They ate in silence for a while. Then Vandermeer said quietly, your dad and I ran an op together in 1991, Gulf War. We were tasked with infiltrating an Iraqi command post, just the two of us behind enemy lines 6 days. I never heard this story. It's still classified, but you should know it now. Vandermeer stared at his food, lost in memory. Third night, we were compromised. Iraqi patrol stumbled on our hide site. Declan could have run. Instead, he created a diversion, drew them away, got himself captured. Caitlin's breath caught. Captured. For 18 hours, they interrogated him, roughed him up, but he never broke, never gave up the mission or my location. I completed the intelligence gathering and called in extraction. When our guys hit the compound, Declan was still spitting defiance. Why are you telling me this now? Vandermeer met her eyes. Because when they asked him later why he didn't run, you know what he said? Running would have been safer. But safety isn't the mission. The mission is the mission. Tonight, Cat's safety isn't your mission. Justice is your mission, just like it was his. The weight of that legacy settled over her shoulders like armor. At 1800 hours, the NCIS technical team arrived. Two specialists, both women, both professional and efficient. They fitted Caitlin with the recording equipment, testing and retesting. The camera button went on her jacket, positioned for optimal field of view. The audio recorder was concealed in her sports bra, the transmitter no larger than a credit card. They gave her a new panic button, this one disguised as a tube of lipstick. Twist the bottom twice fast, and we'll have your location within 5 seconds, the senior tech explained. SWAT deploys immediately, 90 seconds to breach. After they left, Caitlin stood in front of her bathroom mirror, studying herself. She looked like she always did, maybe a bit more makeup than usual, hair down instead of pulled back. Madison, the contractor, not Caitlin, the operator. But in her eyes, she could see the truth. The hardness, the determination, the absolute focus that came before combat. Her father had worn that same expression in photographs from the Gulf, from Panama, from a dozen classified operations. For you, Dad, she said to her reflection, and for everyone he betrayed. At 2030, Sullivan called with final confirmation. SWAT is in position. Surveillance shows approximately 15 people inside the warehouse already. We've identified Hutchins, Kincaid, and 3 known militia members. This is happening, Cat. Last chance to abort. I'm going in. Then stay sharp, stay safe. Caitlin drove her truck through the industrial outskirts of Chula Vista as the sun set over the Pacific. This part of the city was all warehouses and shipping facilities. Legitimate businesses shuttered for the weekend. She found Industrial Way, easily followed it to number 2847. The warehouse was exactly as Webb had described, 2-story concrete structure, loading bay visible in the rear, minimal external lighting. 4 vehicles in the parking area, including Hutchins's lifted pickup. 2 men stood outside the main entrance, clearly acting as guards. Both were large, both carried themselves with military bearing. Caitlin Park took a deep breath and became Madison. She walked toward the entrance, heels clicking on asphalt. The guards watched her approach, exchanged glances. Help you. The taller one was maybe 30. Derek invited me. Derek Hutchins. They relaxed slightly. Name, Madison. The guard keyed a radio. Boss got a Madison here, says Hutchins invited her. Static, then Hutchins' voice. Yeah, send her in. Inside the warehouse had been transformed into something between a social club and an armory. Folding tables held beer and pizza. A poker game occupied one corner. But Caitlin's trained eye went immediately to the crates stacked against the far wall labeled automotive parts. Approximately 18 men filled the space. Most were military-age fit, wearing civilian clothes that didn't quite hide their operator backgrounds. A few were older, harder, and there near the poker table was Derek Hutchins. He saw her immediately, his face lighting up with predatory satisfaction. Madison, you actually came. You said it would be fun. She smiled, let him take her hand, resisted the urge to break his fingers. Oh, it will be. Come on, let me introduce you around. In the SWAT van 2 blocks away, Vandermeer watched the video feed from Caitlin's camera, his heart hammering. Webb sat beside him, tactical headset on coordinating positions. She's in, Webb said quietly into his radio. All teams maintain position. We wait for confirmation of the transfer. Hutchins walked Caitlin through the warehouse, introducing her to Rangers, to men whose faces would later be matched with military records and militia watch lists. The camera captured everything. And this, Hutchins said, steering her toward a man standing near the crates, is the guy who makes everything happen. Chief Kincaid, this is Madison. She does physical therapy at the base. Wade Kincaid turned and Caitlin's breath caught. He was exactly as she remembered from 5 years ago, just harder. 54 years old, built like a fire hydrant, silver hair cropped short. Deep-set eyes that had seen too much. Those eyes met hers and she saw the recognition flicker immediately. Madison, Kincaid repeated slowly. His voice was gravel and smoke. Funny name. You from around here? Navy brat, actually. Grew up all over. What's your last name, Madison? She'd prepared for this. In the van, Vandermeer tensed. Brennan, she said quietly, going off script, trusting Vandermeer's advice. Madison Brennan. Kincaid went very still. Around them, the warehouse noise continued, but in their small bubble time seemed to suspend. Brennan, he repeated. Any relation to Declan Brennan? He was my father. She let grief color her voice, which wasn't hard because the grief was real. He died 5 years ago, cancer. I know, I was at the funeral. Kincaid's expression shifted through several emotions. You were the one who gave the eulogy. I remember now, you look like your mother. Everyone says that. What were you doing here, Cat? The use of her nickname was deliberate. Derek invited me to a party. I didn't know you'd be here. Hutchins, sensing something wrong, moved closer. Everything okay, Chief? This is Declan Brennan's daughter. Kincaid's voice was flat, his eyes never leaving Caitlin's face. The entire warehouse seemed to pause. Shit, Hutchins said. You didn't tell me because I didn't think it mattered. Caitlin kept her voice steady. My dad served with you, Chief Kincaid. He talked about you, said you were one of the good ones. When Derek mentioned some of Dad's old teammates got together, sometimes I wanted to see for myself. It was a gamble, but it had the advantage of being emotionally true, even if operationally false. Kincaid studied her for a long moment. In the van, Vandermeer held his breath. Webb's hand hovered over the radio. Then Kincaid's expression softened slightly. Declan was the best man I ever served with. His death was a loss to everyone who knew him. Thank you. Caitlin let real tears gather. He thought the same of you. But Kat, this isn't the kind of party your dad would want you at. These are rough men doing rough business. I can handle rough. Dad didn't raise me to be delicate. No, I don't suppose he did. Kincaid seemed to come to a decision. All right, you're here? You're Declan's daughter. You're welcome. But stay close to Hutchins. Don't wander. And when I say it's time to leave, you leave. Clear. Clear. Crisis navigated, but Caitlin knew she was on borrowed time. Kincaid was suspicious would be watching her. Hutchins steered her toward the bar area. Drink? Beer's fine. As Hutchins fetched drinks, one of the older men approached. Grant Foley, militia leader from Idaho FBI watch list. Hutchins, who's the girl? Foley's voice carried the flat affect of the Mountain West. Friend from the base. She's cool. She better be. We got business tonight. Foley looked at Caitlin with open hostility. You know what happens here, girl? I don't see anything. Caitlin's voice was steady. And I don't ask questions. Smart. Foley turned back to Hutchins. Keep her that way. We go at 2200. Buyers will be here in 15 minutes. The camera was recording every word. In the van, Sullivan was coordinating with federal prosecutors. At 2140, a semi-truck backed up to the loading bay. The noise in the warehouse quieted. This was it, the transfer. 4 men emerged from the truck. 3 were clearly muscle. The 4th was older, maybe 60. Kincaid moved to greet them. Gentlemen, glad you could make it. Let's talk business. Caitlin positioned herself near a support column, trying to look inconspicuous, while keeping the camera pointed toward the transaction. Hutchins stayed near her. Kincaid and the militia leader walked to the crates. 40 M4 rifles, all with select fire capability restored. 25 sets of interceptor body armor. 15 PVS-14 night vision units. All military grade. Let's see the merchandise. Kincaid opened a crate. Inside, nestled in foam, were rifles. Even from a distance, Caitlin could see they were HK-4 the SEAL variant with the specific modifications her father had helped develop. In the van, Vandermeer's jaw clenched. Those are Declan's weapons. That son of a bitch is selling Declan's legacy to terrorists. Webb was already coordinating SWAT positions. We need confirmation of money exchange. The moment cash changes hands, we have them cold. The militia leader inspected several rifles, seemed satisfied. Price was $200,000. I've got it in the truck. Let's see it. 2 militia members returned to the truck, brought back 2 large duffel bags. They opened them on a table, revealing banded stacks of $100 bills. Kincaid pulled out a bill counter, began verification. The warehouse was silent except for the mechanical whir. Then Grant Foley's voice cut through the quiet. Hey, the girl's recording us. Every head turned toward Caitlin. Her blood turned to ice. Foley was pointing at her, his face twisted with rage. She's got a fucking camera. Look at her jacket button. Time seemed to slow. Caitlin saw Hutchins' expression shift from confusion to understanding to fury. Saw Kincaid's hand move toward his hip. Saw every armed man reaching for weapons. In the van, Webb was already screaming into his radio. Breach! 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 All teams go now! Caitlin's hand went to her jacket, found the panic button, twisted it twice. Then she was moving, dropping low as the first gunshot cracked through the warehouse. The round punched through the space where her head had been. She rolled, came up behind a stack of crates, drew her Glock from the ankle holster. She's a cop, Foley was screaming. Federal agent, kill her. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Militia members opened fire. Kincaid's people scattered. Hutchins stood frozen, staring at Caitlin with betrayed rage. Another shot closer. Caitlin saw Jensen pinned down behind a table, blood spreading across his shoulder. Her training took over. 90 seconds until SWAT breached. She needed to survive 90 seconds. Active shooter, civilian down, she shouted. Medical emergency. Foley appeared around the crates, pistol raised. You lying bitch. Caitlin didn't hesitate. She put 2 rounds center mass. Foley stumbled backward, hit the crate, slid down, leaving a blood trail. His weapon skittered across concrete. He was still alive, gasping, but out of the fight. Lying federal bitch, he choked out, then went still. Federal agent, she called out. Drop your weapons. The response was a hail of gunfire from 3 directions. She pressed herself against the crates, hearing rounds impact all around her. Outside, SWAT was breaching the main entrance. Flashbangs detonated with concussive force. Smoke began filling the warehouse. Commands echoed, "Board. Federal agents, get down." But Foley's militia members weren't surrendering. They were fighting. Caitlin saw a militia member moving toward Jensen's position, weapon raised to execute the wounded ranger. Without thinking, she broke cover, sprinted across open space, and tackled the man from the side. They hit the ground together. He was bigger, heavier. But Caitlin had been trained by Declan Brennan. She drove her elbow into his throat, just enough pressure to make him gag and release his weapon, then kicked it away and rolled clear. Stay down, she screamed at Jensen. Medical is coming. A figure emerged from the smoke. Derek Hutchins' face contorted with rage, a different K-bar knife in hand than the one bagged as evidence Friday night, but just as deadly. "You played me," he snarled. "You lying bitch. Drop the knife, Derek. It's over." "It's not over until I finish what I started." He lunged the blade, seeking her throat. But Caitlin had learned this lesson already. She parried his knife hand, stepped inside his reach, used his momentum. But this time she didn't just disarm him. This time she drove her knee into his groin, her elbow into his face, and as he doubled over, she stripped the knife and put him on the ground with the force that cracked his head against concrete. He didn't get up. SWAT was inside now, 12 operators in full tactical gear, moving with lethal efficiency. "Civilian down," Caitlin called toward the nearest SWAT operator. "Gunshot wound right shoulder, needs immediate medical." The operator reached her position. "Ma'am, are you Brennan?" "Yes, wounded man behind that table 20 feet. The operator relayed the information. Two more SWAT members appeared with medical gear. Caitlin stayed low, weapon ready, scanning for threats. The militia members were either down or surrendering. Kincaid's people had scattered. Where was Kincaid? She spotted him near the office stairs, moving fast. In his hand was something that made Caitlin's blood freeze. A dead man's switch connected to what looked like a brick of C4 explosive. "Warehouse is rigged," she screamed. "Kincaid has a bomb." Everything stopped. SWAT operators froze, civilians hit the deck. Webb's voice came over the tactical radio. "Brennan, do you have visual on the device?" "Affirmative, dead man's switch, approximately 1 pound C4. He's heading toward the offices." "All teams hold position. Do not engage the bomber." But Caitlin was already moving, climbing the stairs after Kincaid. The offices overlooked the main warehouse floor. If that bomb went off from elevation, the blast would kill everyone below. "Kincaid," she called. "Chief Kincaid, stop." He turned at the top of the stairs. In the emergency lighting, his face looked ancient, carved by regret and desperation. "Cat Brennan," he said quietly. "Should have known. You look too much like your mother. Sound too much like Declan." "It's over, Chief. Put down the switch. Nobody else has to die." "It's been over for a long time." He held up the switch, showed her the mechanism. "You know what this is? Dead man's switch. You release it, the circuit completes, the bomb detonates. Your father taught me how to make these. Iraq, 2006. We were improvising traps for insurgents. He was brilliant at it, brilliant at everything. And I was always just good enough to follow his lead. He trusted you. He shouldn't have." Kincaid's voice broke. "I let him down, let myself down." Below, SWAT had evacuated everyone they could, but Caitlin knew there wasn't enough time to clear the blast radius. "Why?" she asked, genuinely wanting to understand. "You served honorably for 22 years. Why throw it away?" "Because the country I served betrayed me." The rage in his voice was shocking. 22 years, 3 bullet wounds, permanent nerve damage. They gave me 30% disability. 30%. My medical bills cost more than my pension. My wife needs surgery I can't afford. The VA keeps denying claims. I gave them everything and they gave me nothing. So you sold weapons to terrorists. I sold weapons to Americans who feel betrayed by their own government. I'm not saying they're right, Kat, but I understand them. My father would never have accepted that justification." Kincaid's laugh was bitter. "Your father died with full medical care, admiral's pension, military honors. He never had to choose between his wife's health and his honor. I did, and I chose wrong." In Caitlin's earpiece, Vandermeer's voice was urgent. "Cat EOD is 3 minutes out. Keep him talking." Chief Kincaid, releasing that switch won't change anything, won't pay your bills, won't heal your wife. It'll just add murder to your charges. I'm already going to Leavenworth for the rest of my life. Might as well go out my way. That's not what teammates do. Dad taught me that. He taught you that. We don't quit. We don't take the easy way out. There's nothing easy about this." Kincaid's hand trembled on the switch. Caitlin saw it then, the resolve in his eyes, the decision already made. He was going to release the switch. She had one chance. "Dad's last words were about you," she lied, her voice breaking with manufactured grief and real desperation. "In the hospital, 2 days before he died. He said, 'Tell Wade I'm sorry I couldn't be there when he needed me. Tell him I know the system failed him. Tell him I understand.'" Even as the words left her mouth, Caitlin felt the weight of using her father's memory as a weapon. Dad would understand, she told herself. He'd taught her that in war, you use every tool available. But this wasn't war. This was a broken man who'd once saved her father's life. She pushed down the guilt. Justice first. Redemption later. Kincaid went very still. Declan said that he did. He knew you were struggling. He wanted to help, but he got sick before he could. The lie came easily because it should have been true. He never reached out. He was dying, Chief. By the time he knew something was wrong, he had 6 months left. But he talked about you, said you were the best swim buddy he ever had. Tears tracked down Kincaid's weathered face. That was a long time ago. We were different men. But you can still be that man, the one who saved lives instead of taking them. Caitlin took a slow step forward. Give me the switch, Chief. End this the right way. Dad would want you to end this the right way. For a long moment, Wade Kincaid stood at the top of those stairs holding a bomb that could kill them both, wrestling with demons Caitlin could only imagine. She saw the calculation in his eyes, the easy escape of death versus the hard road of accountability. His jaw clenched, his eyes closed, and when they opened again, something had changed. The rage was gone, replaced by exhausted acceptance. Declan would want me to face this, he whispered, not run from it. Then his hand opened. The switch fell in what felt like slow motion. Caitlin's training kicked in before conscious thought. Lunge catch secure. The metal was warm from his grip, the trigger mechanism crude but effective. One wrong move and they'd both be vapor. She held it steady, barely breathing until EOD specialists swarmed up the stairs, secured the device, rendered it safe. Kincaid sank to his knees, hands behind his head, the fight gone out of him. I'm sorry, he whispered. Tell your father I'm sorry. Tell him yourself, Caitlin said softly. Wherever he is, I think he's listening. SWAT took Kincaid into custody, gentle despite his crimes. Caitlin descended the stairs on shaking legs, the adrenaline finally crashing. The warehouse was a scene of organized chaos. Paramedics treating wounded, federal agents processing prisoners, evidence teams photographing everything. She counted 12 people in custody, including Hutchins and 3 militia members. 2 wounded, both stable. A medic checked Foley's pulse, shook his head. This one's gone. 2 GSW to the chest, probable cardiac hit. Vandermeer appeared through the smoke, pulled her into a fierce hug. Don't you ever do that again. Chasing a bomber up the stairs. Dad would have done the same thing. I know. That's what terrifies me. Sullivan approached. We got everything. The weapons, the money, the key players. This network is dismantled. Hutchins, Kincaid, and 8 others are going away for a very long time. Jensen, Caitlin asked. The wounded ranger. Stable. You saved his life. He's already giving a statement, volunteered to testify against Hutchins. In the ambulance, Jensen caught Caitlin's eye. He mouthed 2 words, thank you. She nodded. Some people could be redeemed. What about Wolf? Caitlin asked. The specialist who backed away, Sullivan checked her notes. Specialist Marcus Wolf, cooperating fully. He pulled security footage from his phone that shows he tried to stop Hutchins during the assault. He's getting immunity in exchange for testimony. And Kincaid's wife, his motivation for all this? Sullivan's expression softened. We reached out. She had no idea what he was doing. The surgery she needs, VA approved it yesterday. Emergency authorization. She'll be okay. Caitlin felt something loosen in her chest. Not everyone had to be destroyed by this. The night stretched into morning. At 0400, Caitlin sat in the NCIS field office, exhausted but wired, giving her account for the 3rd time to federal prosecutors. Finally, at 0630, Sullivan released her. Go home, sleep. We'll need you for depositions next week, but for now you are done. The case is solid because of you. Vandermeer drove her home through the sunrise. Neither spoke until they reached her driveway. You know Kincaid will claim you lied, Vandermeer said quietly, about Declan's last words. I know. Did you lie? Caitlin thought about it, about truth and necessary fiction, about what her father would have said if he'd known his friend was suffering. I told him what Dad would have wanted to say. That's close enough. Inside her house, Caitlin stood in front of her father's photograph for a long time. The sun was rising, golden light streaming through the windows. It's done, Dad, she said quietly. Hutchins is going away. Kincaid is going away. The weapons trafficking network is dismantled. And I'm okay. The photograph looked back with eternal calm. She thought about Jensen wounded but alive because she'd acted, about the militia attack that would never happen, about the 3 women Hutchins had hurt before who would finally see consequences. Justice delayed, but not denied. 3 weeks later, Caitlin stood in the conference room at Naval Special Warfare Command headquarters. Captain Garrett, NCIS Agent Sullivan, and Lieutenant Webb, and Captain Everett Vandermeer surrounded her. Garrett held a small box, opened it to reveal the Navy and Marine Corps medal. Petty Officer Caitlin Brennan for heroic achievement involving risk to life while serving as an undercover operative in a federal weapons trafficking investigation, and for valor in preventing a bombing that would have caused multiple casualties. It is my privilege to present you with this medal. The citation was read. Applause followed. But what Caitlin focused on was the small group watching from the gallery. 20 SEAL candidates, the ones she trained every morning. After the ceremony, Garrett pulled her aside. I've received authorization to offer you a new position. Advanced hand-to-hand combat instructor. You'd be teaching the Brennan method to every SEAL candidate who comes through this facility. The Brennan method. Your father's techniques, your innovations. The system that's kept our people alive for 30 years. It deserves to be formally recognized. And you're the best person to do it. Caitlin thought about intelligence work, about field operations, about the career she'd planned. I accept, she said. 6 weeks later, on a Saturday morning, Caitlin stood on the training mat in the newly christened Brennan Combat Training Center. The dedication plaque bore her father's name and photograph. She was teaching advanced defensive tactics to 25 SEAL candidates. Among them were 3 women struggling against the same skepticism Caitlin had faced. One candidate, Petty Officer Sarah Reeves, was paired with a male candidate who outweighed her by 80 pounds. He was holding back. Problem candidate, Caitlin asked. Ma'am, I don't want to hurt her. You won't. Reeves demonstrate technique 17, full speed. Reeves executed perfectly using leverage and timing to put her partner on the mat in 3 seconds. Caitlin helped the male candidate up. What did you learn? That I underestimated her, ma'am. No, you learned that assumptions get you killed. In combat, respect everyone's capability. Gender doesn't matter. Mice doesn't matter. Training matters. She looked at Reeves. Again, this time he won't hold back. The male candidate attacked for real. Reeves defended, countered, controlled. Not perfectly, but competently. From the observation gallery, Vandermeer watched with quiet satisfaction. Beside him stood Garrett and Senior Chief Anderson. She's the best instructor we've had in 20 years, Anderson said. She's her father's daughter, Vandermeer replied, and she's just getting started. On the mat, Caitlin continued teaching, pushing candidates, correcting techniques, building warriors who would carry the Brennan method into future battles. The morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the space where her father's photograph hung. After class, Caitlin stood alone in the facility for a moment. She touched her father's trident pin, the one Vandermeer had given her after the warehouse operation, the one she wore every day now. Her phone buzzed. Message from Sullivan. Hutchins sentenced today, 18 years federal prison. Kincaid got 12 years. Jensen testified, got immunity. Justice served. Caitlin typed back, thank you for everything. Then she locked the facility, walked to her truck, and drove home through the San Diego afternoon. At a stoplight, she saw a young woman in Navy PT gear jogging past, focused and determined, chasing her own dreams. That's what this was all about. Creating a military where capability mattered more than gender, where excellence was recognized regardless of its source. Her father had started that work. She would continue it. At home, Caitlin stood in front of Declan Brennan's photograph one more time. We did it, Dad, she said softly. Justice for the women Hutchins hurt. Accountability for the man who betrayed your trust. And a legacy that will outlive us both. The photograph offered no response, but she felt his presence anyway. In the techniques she taught. In the standards she maintained. In every candidate who refused to quit. Her father had taught her finish what you start no matter the cost. And neither did the warriors she would forge in his image, carrying forward a tradition of excellence, honor, and uncompromising dedication to something larger than themselves. The sun set over Coronado, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, and Caitlin Brennan stood at the intersection of past and future, holding the line her father had drawn, making sure that line held firm for generations yet to come. Always.